Welcome to the investigation, because the Andrew Jackson, Andrew Johnson, and Ulysses S. Grant presidential dollars may look ordinary, but hidden details in their condition, varieties, and edge lettering can make some authenticated examples far more interesting to collectors. Let's examine what separates the common coins from the truly exceptional ones. First coin. The 2007 P. James Madison Presidential Dollar looks, at first glance, like a modern $1 coin that should be easy to overlook. Yet there is much more going on here than a portrait of America's fourth president stamped onto a golden-colored planchet. The Philadelphia Mint struck this coin during the first year of the presidential dollar program, when the United States was attempting to bring greater attention to circulating dollar coins by placing a chronological series of presidents on the obverse. Madison was the fourth release, following George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson, and that makes the 2007 P issue an important part of the foundation of the entire series. But the real collector story begins when you move beyond the date and mint mark and examine the coin as an individual specimen. The condition of the surfaces, quality of the strike, placement of the edge lettering, variety, production characteristics, and especially the presence of a genuine mint error can dramatically change what collectors are willing to pay. Later in this story, we will look at authenticated examples, documented auction results, and the specific characteristics that separate an ordinary Madison dollar from the comparatively scarce pieces that attract serious collectors. One important warning should be established immediately, however. Despite internet claims that ordinary 2007 P Madison dollars can routinely bring four-figure prices, the documented market evidence does not support that conclusion. Most examples remain common modern coins, while genuinely unusual, certified varieties and errors occupy a very different category. PCGS records a Philadelphia mintage of 84,560,000 for the regular 2007 P. James Madison dollar, and its documented auction record for the standard position A issue is $676 for an MS-66 example, a result that illustrates just how important it is to distinguish a verified variety or error from an ordinary coin carrying the same date and mint mark. To understand why this coin exists, you have to step back to the political and historical world of James Madison himself. Madison was born in Virginia in 1751 and became one of the central architects of the American constitutional system, later serving as Secretary of State under Thomas Jefferson before becoming president in 1809. His presidency unfolded during an increasingly dangerous period in relations between the United States and Great Britain, eventually leading to the War of 1812. That conflict tested the young republic's military preparedness, disrupted commerce, and ultimately brought British forces into Washington in 1814, where the White House and other public buildings were burned. Madison's administration also had to deal with the difficult economic consequences of wartime trade disruption and the financial challenges of sustaining the federal government. Yet Madison's legacy extends far beyond those years in the White House. His earlier involvement in the Constitutional Convention, the Federalist Papers, and the creation and defense of the Bill of Rights helped establish the political framework that the United States still operates under today. More than 2 centuries later, the presidential dollar program used his image to transform that historical legacy into a circulating object that could pass from hand to hand. The James Madison dollar was released in 2007 as part of the United States Mint's presidential $1 coin program, a series authorized by Congress to honor deceased U.S. presidents in chronological order. That historical sequence gives the coin an obvious appeal to collectors building complete presidential sets, but history alone does not make a particular specimen rare. Millions were produced, and Philadelphia alone struck 84.56 million regular Madison dollars. The P mint mark, therefore, identifies Philadelphia production, rather than signaling that the coin is automatically scarce. Physically, the 2007 P Madison dollar is unmistakable when you know what to look for. It measures approximately 26.5 millimeters across and weighs about 8.1 grams, making it considerably larger than a quarter, but lighter than many older US silver dollars. Its composition is not gold, despite the warm golden color that led many people to call the presidential dollars golden dollars. The regular coin uses a copper-based manganese brass outer layer over a copper core, with PCGS listing the metal composition as 88.5% copper, 6% zinc, 3.5% manganese, and 2% nickel. That engineered composition was selected to create a distinctive appearance while allowing the mint to produce a durable circulating dollar without using precious metal. The obverse carries the portrait of James Madison, with the inscriptions United States of America, James Madison, In God We Trust, and the denomination $1. The portrait was designed by Joel Iskowitz and sculpted by Don Everhart, whose work helped establish the visual identity of the early presidential dollar series. The reverse is the common Statue of Liberty design used throughout the series, also associated with Don Everhart. But the feature that deserves especially close attention is the edge. Instead of leaving the edge plain or reeded, the mint applied inscriptions including the date, mint mark, and the mottos EPLUOBUSUNUM and In God We Trust around the circumference. This edge lettering was one of the most distinctive technical features of the presidential dollar program, but it also became the source of some of its most interesting varieties and errors. The lettering was applied separately from the main obverse and reverse striking operations, which created opportunities for unusual positioning, weakness, missing letters, doubled lettering, and other production anomalies. That is where the collector value story becomes considerably more interesting. The production process also explains why two coins from the same 2007 issue can look surprisingly different under magnification. A normal business strike coin begins with a prepared planchet, which is struck between dies carrying the obverse and reverse designs. The edge lettering is a separate operation, and the relationship between these stages created what specialists now recognize as different edge positions and varieties. PCGS identifies two major varieties for the regular 2007 Madison dollar, known as Position A and Position B, reflecting the orientation of the edge lettering relative to the obverse and reverse designs. For the average collector, these differences may seem microscopic, but specialists can use them to identify particular coins and organize advanced collections. The mint also produced special satin finish versions for collector sets, and those pieces should not be confused with ordinary circulation strikes. The special strike Madison dollars have their own population and variety information, and some carry edge errors that are considerably more collectible than normal examples. The distinction matters because simply seeing a 2007 and a bright, attractive surface is not enough to establish rarity. A collector should first determine whether the coin is a regular circulation strike, a satin finish specimen, or a recognized error variety. Then the surfaces must be examined under good lighting for contact marks, abrasions, discoloration, spots, and evidence of cleaning. Modern copper-based alloys can develop changes in appearance from environmental exposure, and improper handling can permanently reduce the coin desirability. A brilliant-looking coin that has been polished, chemically treated, or aggressively wiped may be worth less to a serious collector than a naturally preserved example with original surfaces. Strike quality matters as well. Presidential dollars can show weakness in certain portions of the design or edge lettering, and specialists learn to distinguish legitimate mint-produced characteristics from post-mint damage. That distinction is essential because the edge of this coin is particularly vulnerable to scratches and flattening after it leaves the mint. This is also the point where the most intriguing Madison dollars begin to separate themselves from the millions of ordinary pieces. The presidential dollar series became famous among era collectors because edge lettering could be missing, weak, partially present, doubled, or improperly positioned. For the 2007 Madison issue, PCGS catalogs a weak edge lettering position A error and a partial edge lettering position A error, in addition to other recognized varieties. The documented market demonstrates how dramatically a genuine error can change collector interest. PCGS currently lists a 5-year price history figure of $350 for a certified 2007 weak edge lettering Madison position a graded MS66, compared with roughly $30 for a standard position AMS67 in the same guide. That does not mean every weakly lettered coin is worth hundreds of dollars. It means the authentication and attribution of the error are critical. An even more important lesson comes from the documented auction record for the weak edge lettering variety. PCGS records a $676 sale for an MS66 example in April 2010. That is a genuine historical result, but it should not be interpreted as the normal value of the entire 2007 Madison population. The market has changed considerably since the early years of the Presidential Dollar series, and modern guide prices and auction outcomes can differ substantially from older results. PCGS also lists a partial edge lettering position of variety and gives it a substantially higher guide figure than the ordinary coin at comparable grades, again demonstrating that specialists pay for a specific, identifiable mint-produced anomaly rather than simply a coin that appears unusual. This is why collectors should be extremely cautious with online claims suggesting that a damaged, weakly struck, or strange-looking edge automatically represents a rare error. True errors need to be attributable, preferably documented by a recognized grading service, and supported by characteristics consistent with the mint's production process. When grading enters the discussion, the difference between an attractive coin and a truly elite specimen becomes even more important. A circulated Madison dollar may show scratches, bag marks, dullness, and edge damage simply from moving through commerce, while an uncirculated coin retains its original mint state surfaces. Professional grading services use the Sheldon numerical scale, with mint state coins generally falling from MS60 through MS70. At the lower end of mint state, a coin can be technically uncirculated but still carry numerous contact marks or weak visual appeal. At MS65 and above, surface quality becomes increasingly important, and at MS67 or MS68, tiny marks, uneven strike characteristics, or distractions can determine whether the coin reaches the next grade. For modern coins such as this one, very high grades can be especially difficult because freshly struck pieces were stored and transporting in large quantities, allowing coins to collide with one another and acquire marks before reaching collectors. A coin graded MS66 may therefore be substantially more desirable than a heavily marked example that technically remains uncirculated. Color and surface originality matter too, although the usual Lincoln cent-style red, red-brown, and brown classifications do not apply to the manganese brass presidential dollar in the same way. Instead, collectors focus on original luster, attractive coloration, freedom from spotting, and whether the surface appears natural. Satin finish examples are evaluated separately because their deliberately subdued texture is part of their manufacture. Authentication is equally important. A professional grading service can verify the coin's identity, examine its surfaces, determine whether an apparent error is genuine, and encapsulate it with a certification number that allows collectors to verify the assigned grade and attribution. This becomes especially valuable when dealing with edge errors because altered coins can be created outside the mint by manipulating or damaging the edge. A missing inscription caused by wear or grinding is not equivalent to a genuine missing edge lettering error. The difference can mean the difference between an ordinary damaged dollar and a recognized collectible variety. The question of value, then, has to be approached with discipline rather than excitement. An ordinary circulated 2007 James Madison dollar is generally a face-value modern coin, and even many attractive uncirculated examples trade for relatively modest amounts. Certified high-grade regular strikes can command premiums, but documented PCGS figures show that ordinary position A and position B pieces remain far below the four-figure range in the current market. For example, PCGS lists a recent guide figure around $30 for a standard position A MS67 and around $22 for a position B MS66+, while certain first day of issue examples can bring somewhat different premiums. The much more interesting numbers appear when a coin carries a recognized error or special designation. A certified weak edge lettering position AMS66 has a recent PCGS guide figure around $350, while a partial edge lettering position, AMS 65 Plus, has been listed around $185. Satin finish examples can also command more attention when paired with significant edge errors. PCGS has listed a guide figure around $500 for a high-grade missing edge lettering Madison satin finish error. These numbers are useful examples of the market's structure, but they are not promises of what a particular coin will sell for. Auction prices can be lower or higher depending on timing, venue, certification, appeal, registry competition, and the exact attribution. In fact, a documented 2007 P. Madison missing edge lettering satin finish error, graded SB66, sold for $45 at a 2019 David Lawrence auction, showing just how dramatically actual transaction prices can differ from guide values. That is why I claim that this coin is worth $1,000, $2,000, or $4,000, simply because it is a 2007 P. Madison dollar, would be misleading. I could not verify an authenticated auction result in the $1,000 to $4,000 range for the specific 2007 P. Madison varieties examined here. The strongest documented regular strike auction record located was $676, and the recognized errors and satin finish pieces currently documented by PCGS generally remain below 4 figures. The real lesson is not that the coin is worthless. It is that rarity has to be demonstrated rather than assumed. For anyone who owns one of these coins, the smartest approach is to preserve the evidence before trying to determine its value. Do not clean it, polish it, scrape the edge, or attempt to improve its appearance with household chemicals. Hold the coin by its edges, preferably over a soft surface, and examine both faces under neutral, diffused light. A magnifying glass or loupe can help reveal contact marks and edge lettering characteristics, but magnification should be used to observe rather than manipulate the coin. Record the exact date, mint mark, weight, diameter, and any unusual edge characteristics, then compare those observations with established references from professional grading services. If an apparent error seems promising, professional attribution becomes particularly important because the market contains many ordinary coins with damage that can look dramatic to an inexperienced eye. Storage should involve an inert, archival quality holder rather than loose contact with paper, PVC, plastic, rubber, or abrasive materials. Avoid excessive humidity and sudden environmental changes, and keep the coin away from substances that can react with its copper-based alloy. For collectors building a presidential dollar collection, the 2007 P. Madison is valuable as part of the larger historical sequence, even when it carries only its normal face value. For error specialists, however, the coin offers a completely different field of study. Position A and Position B varieties, weak edge lettering, partial lettering, missing lettering, satin finishes, and other production characteristics create layers of collecting interest that are invisible if you only look at the portrait. Ultimately, the most desirable example is not necessarily the shiniest coin or the one with the most dramatic appearance. It is the coin whose identity, condition, variety, and production history can all be demonstrated. The 2007 P. James Madison Presidential Dollar, therefore, serves as a useful reminder of what serious numismatics is really about, not simply finding an old-looking coin, but learning how a modern object was made, understanding what went wrong when it became an error, documenting what survived, and allowing authenticated evidence to determine what collectors are actually willing to pay. Next coin. There is something deceptively ordinary about the 2008 Andrew Jackson Presidential $1 coin. Millions were struck, millions entered the American economy, and today examples can still be encountered without much difficulty. Yet this particular issue has become an interesting target for collectors because the coin sits at the intersection of presidential history, modern mint technology, edge lettering varieties, condition rarity, and a series of production mistakes that can turn an otherwise ordinary dollar into a much more desirable numismatic piece. The 2008 Andrew Jackson dollar was the 7th design released under the presidential $1 coin program, and the Philadelphia issue alone had a recorded mintage of 61,180,000 pieces, meaning that the date itself is absolutely not rare. What makes individual examples interesting is what happened to them before, during, and after production. Whether the strike is exceptionally sharp, whether the surfaces survived circulation without significant marks, whether the edge lettering displays a recognized position or error, whether the coin is an ordinary circulation strike or a special collector issue, and whether its authenticity and attribution can be independently verified. That distinction is essential because a modern dollar can look unusual under magnification while still being nothing more than ordinary damage. Later, we will examine the characteristics that determine collector value, the differences between the major Philadelphia varieties, professional grading considerations, and documented sales of certified examples. We will also separate genuine market evidence from the inflated claims sometimes attached to presidential dollars online, because the fact that one unusual example sold for a substantial premium does not mean every 2008 Andrew Jackson dollar shares that value. The most fascinating part of this coin is therefore not simply the portrait on the obverse, but the manufacturing story hidden around its edge and the remarkable difference that authentication, condition, and rarity can create between coins that began life on the very same production line. The man portrayed on the coin was one of the most forceful and controversial presidents in early American history. Andrew Jackson was born in 1767 in the Waxhaws region, became a military hero during the War of 1812, and entered the presidency in 1829 after a political campaign that helped reshape American democracy. His victory represented the growing influence of ordinary white male voters in national politics, while his presidency was marked by an aggressive executive style, fierce opposition to the Second Bank of the United States, conflicts over federal authority and states' rights, and the deeply consequential Indian removal policies that culminated in the forced displacement of Native American peoples. Jackson's military reputation was cemented by the Battle of New Orleans, fought in January 1815 after the Treaty of Ghent had already been signed, but before news of the peace agreement had reached the combatants. More than a decade later, his image became associated with the expanding political culture of the so-called Jacksonian era, when mass political participation, party organization, newspapers, and presidential campaigning were becoming increasingly important. His presidency ended in 1837, precisely the years printed beneath his portrait on the coin. The United States Mint selected him for the Presidential Dollar series because the program honored deceased presidents in chronological order, making Jackson the seventh presidential design. The coin itself was authorized under the Presidential Dollar Coin Program Act, Public Law 109-145, and the Andrew Jackson circulation strike was officially released on August 14, 2008. The release ceremony carried an unusual historical connection. The Mint held an event at Jackson's former home, the Hermitage, near Nashville, Tennessee, where the new dollar was promoted to the public. That timing is especially interesting in hindsight because the United States was entering one of the most turbulent economic periods in generations. By September 2008, the financial crisis had intensified dramatically, with the collapse or rescue of major financial institutions, severe market volatility, and growing recessionary pressure. The Jackson dollar was therefore introduced during an era when Americans were becoming increasingly conscious of money, banking, credit, and financial stability, subjects that had also been central to Jackson's own presidency nearly 2 centuries earlier. The physical construction of the coin reveals just how different a modern American dollar is from the silver dollars of earlier generations. The 2008 Andrew Jackson Presidential Dollar measures approximately 26.5 millimeters in diameter and weighs 8.1 grams. Its golden appearance is not evidence of gold content. Instead, the coin is made from a copper-based manganese-brass composition consisting of approximately 88.5% copper, 6% zinc, 3.5% manganese, and 2% nickel. This layered modern alloy gave the presidential dollar its distinctive yellow-gold appearance, while allowing the mint to produce a relatively lightweight circulating dollar. The obverse features Andrew Jackson's portrait, with ANDREW Jackson above the image, and 7th President 1829, 1837 below it. Joel Iskowitz served as the obverse designer through the Mint's Artistic Infusion program, while Don Everhart sculpted the portrait and designed the reverse. On the reverse appears the Statue of Liberty, accompanied by United States of America and the $1 denomination. The Statue of Liberty was deliberately chosen as a unifying reverse design rather than changing the reverse with every president, allowing the presidential portraits to remain the central chronological feature of the series. But the most technically distinctive part of this dollar is neither face of the coin, it is the edge. Instead of being plain or conventionally readed, the edge carries inscriptions including the date, mint mark, EPLUOBUSUNUM, and In God WE Trust. The Mint applied these inscriptions using a separate edge lettering operation, and that additional manufacturing stage created an entirely new field for collectors to study. For the Philadelphia coin, the P mint mark identifies production at the Philadelphia Mint. Denver examples carry D, while proof versions carry the S mint mark from San Francisco. The edge also creates the famous position A and position B orientations. On the 2008 P position of Variety, the edge lettering appears upside down when the presidential portrait is facing upward, while position B displays the lettering in the opposite orientation. Neither orientation by itself should automatically be treated as an error. The edge lettering was applied independently, so orientation can occur naturally. Understanding that point prevents one of the most common mistakes made by inexperienced collectors. Once the coin leaves the theoretical world of specifications and enters the Mint's production process, its story becomes considerably more complicated. A prepared planchet was struck between dies carrying the presidential portrait and Statue of Liberty design, creating the principal faces of the coin, while the edge lettering was handled through a separate operation. That means the finished dollar was effectively the result of multiple manufacturing stages that had to work together correctly. The edge lettering machine, used for circulation strikes, applied the inscriptions around the circumference, and the relationship between those operations helps explain why collectors pay such close attention to the edge. The regular Philadelphia issue has two recognized major varieties, Position A and Position B, and PCGS separately catalogs them rather than treating every 2008 P Jackson dollar as identical. The Philadelphia mintage of 61.18 million makes the normal coin plentiful, but population scarcity can develop at the highest grades because survival in pristine condition is a completely different question from original production numbers. These dollars were intended to circulate, and their broad surfaces made contact marks particularly noticeable. Coins could strike against one another during transportation, banking, storage, and handling, leaving small abrasions that prevent otherwise attractive pieces from reaching the upper end of the mint state scale. A coin can therefore be technically uncirculated while still showing enough marks to receive an MS63, MS64, or MS65 grade rather than an elite MS67 or MS68 designation. Luster also matters. Collectors generally want original, undisturbed mint luster rather than a surface that has been polished or chemically brightened. The golden coloration can vary somewhat with handling and environmental exposure, but the familiar red, red-brown, and brown color categories used for copper cents are not the standard way these manganese brass dollars are classified. Instead, graders focus on surface preservation, luster, strike, eye appeal, and evidence of alteration. Special collector strikes and proofs are evaluated within their own categories and should not be mixed casually with ordinary circulation pieces. The result is a fascinating paradox. A coin with more than 60 million Philadelphia examples can still become conditionally scarce when collectors demand the very finest surviving specimens. Because the number originally struck tells us how many were made, not how many remain today in exceptional, certified condition. That distinction between abundance and rarity is where the value conversation becomes much more serious. A normal circulated 2008 Andrew Jackson dollar is generally a face value coin, and a collector should not assume that simply possessing the correct date and mint mark creates a substantial premium. Even certified ordinary examples can sell for modest amounts compared with the sensational figures sometimes attached to presidential dollars on internet marketplaces. PCGS records an auction result of $190 for a 2008 position, an example graded MS69, sold in January 2019, demonstrating that an extraordinarily high grade can create a meaningful premium even without a spectacular error. Yet that result also provides an important reality check. A grade of MS69 is vastly different from a worn coin found in circulation, and a historical auction result is not a guaranteed current selling price. The Position B variety has a documented PCGS auction record of $55 for an MS67 example sold in 2021, while the first day of issue position, a category, has a recorded $128 auction result for an MS67 specimen. These numbers show why serious collectors examine certification details rather than relying on the date alone. A hypothetical exceptionally preserved example with strong luster, clean fields, excellent strike quality, and a respected MS68 or MS69 certification could attract a collector willing to pay several $100s, potentially approaching a figure such as $1,180 if competition were unusually strong. But that would represent a premium condition example, not the normal market value of the issue. Likewise, a rare and properly attributed production error could move into a completely different valuation category, but the error must be genuine and independently verified. There is no responsible basis for saying that an ordinary 2008 Jackson dollar is routinely worth $2,000 or $4,000. In fact, the documented records available for the standard Philadelphia varieties do not support that claim. The most important lesson is that collector value follows evidence. Authentication, numerical grade, population rarity, originality, eye appeal, variety attribution, and actual buyer demand all matter, while an asking price on an online marketplace proves almost nothing by itself. The edge is where an otherwise ordinary Jackson dollar can become much more interesting, but this is also where caution is most necessary. Presidential dollars developed a strong following among era collectors because the separate edge lettering process created opportunities for genuine mint-made abnormalities, including missing, weak, or improperly applied lettering. However, not every strange-looking edge is a valuable error. A coin can lose lettering through circulation, scraping, grinding, chemical treatment, or other post-mint damage, and those conditions do not transform it into a rare mint error. The same principle applies to edge lettering that appears unusually weak. Weakness alone is not enough unless the characteristics match a recognized production phenomenon. The two normal orientation varieties, Position A and Position B, should also not be confused with errors simply because the lettering appears upside down from one side. PCGS specifically catalogs both major varieties for the 2008 issue. A collector examining a promising coin should begin with the basics, confirm the P mint mark, verify the date on the edge, inspect the complete lettering around the circumference, weigh the coin on an accurate scale, and measure it if necessary. Any unusual feature should be photographed before the coin is handled further. Counterfeit awareness is equally important. Modern presidential dollars are inexpensive enough in ordinary grades that counterfeiting a normal example generally makes little economic sense, but valuable attributed errors and extremely high-grade certified pieces can attract manipulation. A suspicious coin may have incorrect weight, inconsistent lettering, unnatural surfaces, altered edges, or details that do not match genuine mint production. Professional authentication becomes particularly valuable when the suspected premium is large. A respected third-party grading service can determine whether the coin is genuine, evaluate its condition, and when appropriate, attribute a recognized variety or error. This is also why a claimed online sale of $1,400 should never be treated as proof that every 2008 P Jackson dollar is valuable. Collector forums contain examples of people encountering dramatic online asking prices that have little relationship to actual market transactions. The responsible collector follows sold auction records and certified examples rather than unsold listings. If a genuinely unusual Jackson dollar were authenticated and demonstrated to be a rare production error in exceptional condition, a result somewhere around $1,750 could be conceivable in a competitive specialist market. But that would depend entirely on the precise error, certification, grade, and bidders present at the time. Preservation is another factor that can quietly determine whether a promising coin remains collectible decades from now. Because the presidential dollar's surface is based on a copper-rich manganese-brass alloy, careless cleaning can leave permanent evidence that professional graders recognize immediately. A collector should never polish the golden surface, rub away discoloration, scratch the edge to make lettering appear sharper, or use abrasive materials in an attempt to make the coin look newer. Even fingerprints can eventually contribute to surface problems, so the safest handling method is to hold the piece by its edges with clean, dry hands. Storage should involve a quality inert holder or archival capsule designed for numismatic use, kept in a stable environment away from excessive humidity, heat, chemicals, and PVC-containing plastics. For a potentially valuable specimen, keeping documentation with the coin is equally important. Record its source, certification information if applicable, variety attribution, photographs, and any auction or grading references. This information establishes provenance and can make future evaluation easier. Grading itself deserves careful attention because modern coins are often judged harshly at the upper levels. MS60 through MS70 represents the mint state range, but the numerical jump from MS65 to MS66 or MS67 is not simply a matter of counting scratches. Surface quality, luster, strike, eye appeal, and the overall balance of imperfections all influence the result. A strong strike with attractive original luster may be far more desirable than a technically uncirculated coin with dull surfaces and distracting marks. At the very top of the scale, tiny imperfections can separate a premium specimen from an exceptional one, which is why collectors sometimes compete aggressively for coins with unusually high certified grades. The same principle applies to errors. A dramatic, authentic mint-made error with clear documentation can command a substantial premium because the surviving population is much smaller than the ordinary mintage. If an authenticated high-grade error were offered during a period of intense collector competition, a four-figure result, such as $2,250, would not be inherently impossible, but it should never be presented as a normal value for the date. The value belongs to the specific authenticated coin and its rarity, not to every Andrew Jackson dollar struck in 2008. In the end, the 2008 Andrew Jackson Presidential Dollar is valuable as a lesson in how modern numismatics actually works. Its historical importance begins with Andrew Jackson, a president whose military career, populist politics, economic battles, and deeply controversial policies helped shape the United States during a period of rapid national change. Its numismatic importance continues through the Presidential Dollar program, which attempted to place American presidential history directly into everyday commerce. Its technical importance lies in the combination of modern copper-based alloy, large circulating format, presidential portraiture, Statue of Liberty reverse, and edge lettering applied through a separate production stage. And its collector importance comes from the enormous difference between a common circulated example and a truly exceptional specimen with documented rarity. The verified auction evidence available for the 2008 P issue makes that distinction especially clear. The ordinary Position A and Position B coins have documented sales ranging from relatively modest premiums to $190 for an MS69 Position A example, while unusual or exceptionally certified pieces can attract substantially more attention. But there is no reliable evidence here for claiming that an ordinary 2008 P Andrew Jackson dollar is automatically a $3,000 or $4,000 coin. if a particular specimen appears to justify a four-figure valuation, perhaps because it combines an authenticated major mint error, extraordinary grade, strong eye appeal, and genuine rarity, the burden of proof is on the coin. That means professional authentication, credible attribution, population information, and actual completed sales should all support the conclusion. For the collector holding one today, the most productive strategy is therefore not to chase an exciting number, but to examine the coin carefully and ask better questions. Is the edge lettering normal or genuinely anomalous? Is the surface original? Is the coin truly uncirculated? Does the strike stand out? Is the variety recognized by a major grading service? Has a comparable certified specimen actually sold? Those questions transform a simple modern dollar into a piece of numismatic detective work. And that is ultimately why the 2008 Andrew Jackson Presidential Dollar remains worth studying. Not because every example is rare, but because within a large population, authentication, preservation, manufacturing history, and collector competition can reveal individual coins whose stories are far more remarkable than their face value suggests. Next up, at first glance, the 2011 Andrew Johnson Presidential $1 coin looks like another modern golden dollar, a mass-produced piece of American currency that could easily disappear into a drawer or coin jar without attracting much attention. But place one under bright light, turn it slowly between your fingers, and the investigation changes. The portrait is only the beginning. Around the edge is a second layer of information, and within that lettering are clues that specialists use to distinguish ordinary examples from recognized varieties and production errors. The 2011 issue is particularly interesting because Andrew Johnson was the 17th president represented in the presidential $1 coin program, and the Philadelphia and Denver issues were struck in substantial numbers for circulation and collecting. Yet surviving coins do not all occupy the same position in the collector market. Some have ordinary surfaces and ordinary value, while others stand apart because of grade, preservation, edge characteristics, variety attribution, or unusual mint-made features. Professional auction records show that even standard certified examples can bring premiums when they reach exceptional grades, while certain recognized varieties can attract considerably more attention. Later, we will examine exactly what experienced collectors look for, how the edge lettering can reveal the coin's production history, why coin certification can matter as much as its appearance, and what authenticated examples have actually achieved in the marketplace. Most importantly, we will separate genuine rarity from the kind of exaggerated claims that often circulate around modern dollar coins, because a coin being old-looking, shiny, or unusual does not automatically make it scarce. The real question is much more precise. What happened to this particular 2011 Andrew Johnson dollar after it was created, and can that story be proven through the coin itself? To understand why the mint placed Andrew Johnson on this dollar, we have to enter one of the most turbulent chapters in American political history. Johnson was born in Raleigh, North Carolina in 1808, grew up in difficult circumstances, became a tailor, and eventually entered politics in Tennessee. He served in the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate before becoming Abraham Lincoln's vice president in 1865. His presidency began under extraordinary circumstances when Lincoln was assassinated in April 1865, placing Johnson in charge of a nation still devastated by the Civil War. The years from 1865 through 1869 were dominated by Reconstruction, the struggle over how former Confederate states would return to the Union, the political rights of formerly enslaved people, and the growing conflict between Johnson and the Republican-controlled Congress. Johnson's clashes with congressional Republicans eventually produced his impeachment by the House of Representatives in 1868. He was acquitted by the Senate by a single vote and completed his term, but his presidency remained one of the most controversial in American history. The Mint's decision to honor him in 2011 was not an endorsement of every aspect of his presidency. It followed the chronological structure of the presidential $1 coin program, which was created to honor deceased U.S. presidents in the order in which they served. The Andrew Johnson dollar was the 17th design in that sequence. The coin officially entered circulation on February 17, 2011, with a launch ceremony at the Andrew Johnson National Historic Site in Greenville, Tennessee. That location was especially appropriate because Johnson had made Greenville his political home and spent much of his life there. The United States was also living through a very different economic environment in 2011. The country was recovering from the severe financial crisis and recession of 2007-2009. Unemployment remained elevated, housing markets were still recovering, and debates about federal spending, debt, monetary policy, and economic recovery were dominating public discussion. Against that background, the Mint continued a program designed to place presidential history into everyday transactions, even though the presidential $1 coins never achieved the level of routine public circulation originally envisioned. Now look at the coin itself, because its specifications reveal why this series feels so different from traditional American dollars. The 2011 Andrew Johnson Circulation Dollar has a diameter of 26.5 millimeters and weighs 8.1 grams. Its golden color can be misleading. There is no precious metal gold content in the regular circulation issue. Instead, the coin uses a copper-based manganese brass alloy, listed by PCGS as approximately 88.5% copper, 6% zinc, 3.5% manganese, and 2% nickel. That composition was selected to produce the distinctive golden appearance associated with the presidential dollar series, while keeping the coin suitable for mass production and circulation. On the obverse, Andrew Johnson faces the viewer, surrounded by the inscriptions ANDREW Johnson, In God WE Trust, 17th President, and 1865, 1869. Both sides of the circulation coin were designed and sculpted by United States Mint sculptor engraver Don Everhart, giving the piece a consistent artistic treatment. The reverse carries the Statue of Liberty, along with United States of America and the $1 denomination. The Statue of Liberty was used as the common reverse throughout the presidential dollar program, providing visual continuity while the obverses changed from president to president. But the most unusual part of the design is hidden in plain sight. The edge is lettered rather than reeded, and the inscriptions include 2011, EPLUBUSUNUM, and the mint mark. The edge therefore contains information that older American coins normally place on their faces. On a Philadelphia example, the P mint mark identifies the Philadelphia Mint, a D indicates Denver, while S appears on San Francisco proofs. This means an experienced collector does not stop after seeing 2011 on the edge. The mint mark, orientation, completeness of the lettering, and condition of the edge all become part of the examination. The coin's golden color is also not a reliable rarity signal. Thousands of ordinary examples can retain attractive color, while a much rarer variety may have less impressive surfaces. In modern numismatics, appearance creates interest, but measurable characteristics establish the case. The next clue is the coin's production history, and this is where the edge becomes almost like a fingerprint. The principal obverse and reverse designs were struck into prepared planchets, while the edge inscriptions were created through a separate process. Because the lettering was not simply part of the main obverse or reverse dies, the final orientation of the edge lettering could differ from coin to coin. This produced two major varieties for the 2011 P. Andrew Johnson dollar, Position A and Position B. In Position A, when the obverse portrait is facing upward, the edge lettering appears upside down. Position B presents the opposite orientation. Neither orientation should automatically be mistaken for an error. It is a legitimate variety created by the mechanics of the manufacturing process. PCGS also catalogs several more specialized 2011 P. Andrew Johnson edge varieties, including weak edge lettering Position A, partial edge lettering Position A, doubled edge lettering with overlap Position A, and doubled edge lettering with inverted Position A. These names are important because they demonstrate the difference between an ordinary coin that happens to look unusual and a documented variety that specialists can identify and classify. The Philadelphia circulation mintage listed by PCGS for the 2011 P issue is 35,560,000, a substantial production figure but dramatically smaller than some earlier presidential dollar issues. That number should not be interpreted as the number of valuable coins. It simply tells us how many were produced for that particular issue. Some entered commerce and received scratches, nicks, fingerprints, and edge damage. Others were preserved from rolls or mint packaging and survived with much cleaner surfaces. Still others were separated by collectors who recognized unusual edge characteristics. This is how population rarity develops. A coin can begin with millions of companions, but become scarce in a particular grade or variety. The collector examining a possible premium example therefore studies the date and month first, then the edge, then the strike and surfaces. Weak lettering, doubled lettering, missing portions of lettering, or unusual overlaps should be documented rather than guessed at. A strong photograph of the complete edge is often more useful than a dramatic close-up of one tiny feature because it allows the entire lettering pattern to be evaluated. Once we move from production into condition, the coin becomes a study in survival. A newly struck presidential dollar could possess strong luster and clean fields, but transportation and handling could quickly introduce contact marks. These large, relatively flat surfaces are unforgiving. A tiny abrasion across an open field can become much more noticeable than the same mark would be on a heavily detailed coin. Collectors therefore examine the portrait's cheek and hair, the open fields around the inscriptions, the Statue of Liberty on the reverse, and especially the rim and edge. Strike quality also matters. A coin can have attractive luster but lack sharp definition in portions of the design, while another can combine strong detail with unusually clean surfaces. Professional grading services evaluate the entire coin rather than one attractive feature. Mint state grades begin at MS60 and extend upward, with increasingly demanding standards as the number rises. At MS63 or MS64, a coin may be clearly uncirculated but still display numerous contact marks. At MS65, preservation becomes significantly more impressive. MS66 and MS67 examples require cleaner surfaces and stronger overall eye appeal, while the finest grades become extremely competitive because even tiny flaws can prevent a coin from reaching the next level. PCGS records a population of 113 coins at MS67 for the 2011 P Position B variety, with only 4 graded higher in the cited population data, while its price guide lists substantially higher figures for the finest grade levels than for ordinary mint state examples. That does not mean every MS67 is automatically rare or expensive. Population data can change as more coins are submitted, and price guide numbers are not the same thing as guaranteed sale prices. The Kulk question is also different from what collectors encounter with Lincoln cents. These manganese brass dollars are not normally assigned the red, red-brown, and brown designations used for copper cents. Instead, collectors evaluate whether the original golden appearance and mint luster remain intact, whether the surfaces have been chemically altered, and whether spots, fingerprints, or environmental damage have affected the coin. A genuinely original surface is valuable because cleaning can destroy the natural appearance that graders and collectors want. Now the market evidence gives us a useful reality check. The standard 2011 P. Andrew Johnson dollar is not a coin that should automatically be described as a 4-figure rarity. PCGS's auction database records a $133 sale for a Position A mint state example and $125 for a Position B example, while the broader auction records for the Philadelphia issue show many transactions at much lower levels. One documented Position B MS66 example sold for only $6 in a 2013 Great Collections auction, and another MS67 Position B example brought $62.99 in a 2022 eBay transaction recorded by PCGS. Those results demonstrate why collectors must distinguish between a coin's theoretical value, a guide estimate, and what a real buyer actually paid. A high grade can produce a premium, but the premium is not automatically enormous. PCGS currently lists a much higher guide figure for a top-grade position B example than for lower mint state grades, illustrating the concept of condition rarity, but that guide figure should not be confused with an auction guarantee. If a particularly exceptional certified example with an unusually high grade, pristine surfaces, strong strike, original luster, and intense registry set competition appeared at the right moment, a result approaching something like $1,050 could be conceivable in a specialized market. However, that would be an exceptional circumstance, not the ordinary value of the issue. The same principle becomes even more important with varieties and errors. A recognized edge lettering error can be substantially more desirable than a normal position A or position B coin because its population is inherently smaller. But the exact value depends on what happened, how dramatic the error is, the grade, and whether a major grading service has authenticated and attributed it. A hypothetical certified major edge error with excellent preservation might attract bids around $1,900 or more if several specialists competed for it, but a number like that should never be presented as an established auction record unless a documented sale confirms it. The verified records are far more modest for ordinary Andrew Johnson dollars, and that is precisely why serious collectors rely on completed sales instead of inflated online asking prices. The important discovery here is not that every 2011 coin is worth a fortune. It is that a large production run can contain individual pieces whose characteristics make them much more desirable than their face value. The most important investigation begins when the edge appears to tell a different story. PCGS specifically recognizes weak edge lettering, partial edge lettering, doubled edge lettering with overlap, and doubled edge lettering with inverted varieties for the 2011 P. Andrew Johnson dollar. That makes this issue particularly interesting to collectors who specialize in presidential dollar edge errors. But this is exactly where an inexperienced owner can make an expensive mistake. A damaged edge is not automatically a mint error. If someone scraped the edge, ground away lettering, polished the coin, or otherwise altered it after leaving the mint, the result may look dramatic, but does not have the same numismatic significance as an authentic production error. A genuine error should make sense within the mint's manufacturing process and display characteristics consistent with other documented examples. That is why authentication matters so much. Begin with the weight and diameter, verify the muntmuck, inspect the edge lettering around the entire circumference, and compare the orientation with established position A and position B descriptions. Examine the lettering for genuine doubling rather than simply shadows caused by lighting or damage. Look for evidence of mechanical alteration, such as unnatural flattening, fresh tool marks, inconsistent texture, or an edge that does not match the rest of the coin. The same caution applies to counterfeits. A suspicious coin may show incorrect weight, inaccurate lettering, unnatural surfaces, poorly formed design details, or an edge that does not correspond with genuine mint production. Because valuable errors and very high-grade coins can carry significant premiums, professional certification becomes increasingly important as the potential value rises. A grading service can authenticate the coin, assign a grade, and in qualifying cases, identify the specific variety or error. If an authentic, dramatic, rare edge error was certified in an elite grade and offered during a period of strong specialist demand, a four-figure result such as $2,700 would not be impossible. But there is no responsible basis for calling that the normal value of a 2011 P. Andrew Johnson dollar. The collector is paying for the documented anomaly, not simply for the portrait of the 17th president. Preserving the evidence may be just as important as discovering it. If a 2011 Andrew Johnson dollar looks unusually sharp or displays suspicious edge lettering, resist the temptation to clean it before having it examined. Do not polish the golden surface, scrape the edge, rub the lettering with a metal object, or use chemicals intended to make the coin brighter. Such treatments can permanently change the surface and may destroy the originality that gives an uncirculated coin its appeal. Handle the piece by its edges, preferably over a soft surface, and use neutral lighting when photographing both sides and the complete circumference. A good archival holder or inert capsule is preferable to loose storage, particularly for a coin that may eventually require professional grading. Keep it away from excessive humidity, heat, household chemicals, and PVC-containing plastics. Documentation is also worth preserving. Photographs, purchase information, certification records, variety attribution, and any credible auction references can become part of the coin's history. The long-term collectability of the Andrew Johnson dollar does not depend solely on whether the coin becomes scarce in everyday circulation. Its importance comes from several layers working together: the history of a controversial Reconstruction-era president, the early 21st century experiment with circulating presidential dollars, the distinctive manganese brass composition, the common Statue of Liberty reverse, the unusual edge lettering technology, and the specialized varieties created by that manufacturing process. The market already demonstrates the difference between ordinary and exceptional specimens. PCGS reports auction records of $133 for a 2011 P position, a MS example, and $125 for position B, while the finest grade price guide levels can rise much higher, with the current guide showing a $2,250 figure for the top listed position B grade. That figure is a guide value, not a verified auction record, and it should not be confused with what every coin in the series is worth. The documented evidence actually makes the coin more interesting because it forces us to look beyond sensational claims and ask what makes a particular specimen different. The 2011 Andrew Johnson dollar is not valuable merely because Andrew Johnson is pictured on it. It becomes interesting when the coin's physical evidence, its grade, surfaces, luster, strike, edge lettering, variety, authenticity, and provenance, can demonstrate that it is genuinely different from the millions of pieces that began with the same design.